Have you ever, like, looked at a painting so vivid, so meticulously rendered that it felt like it could physically swallow you whole? You know the kind of piece I'm talking about?
Oh, absolutely. Where the perspective draws your eye in so deeply, you catch yourself actually holding your breath.
Right. You're just staring at it, half expecting to step right through the frame, feel the temperature drop, and, like, actually feel the wet brush strokes clinging to your skin.
It's a very specific, almost dizzying kind of vertigo.
Yeah.
That sublime, slightly terrifying realization that art has its own gravitational pull. It doesn't just sit on a wall, It actively pulls you out of your reality.
Yes, and that exact terrifying gravitational pull is the entire foundation of our deep dive today. I have been just poring over our notes for what is, honestly, without a doubt, the must-read book of the season.
Hands down. It's an incredible piece of work.
It's called El Pasado, Shadows of the First Quarter Moon by Berns. And today we are going to really dig into the heavy intellectual themes here. The Gothic vibe, the cost of nostalgia, all of it.
It's a novel that really defies easy categorization. I mean, you have these notes of Gothic horror bleeding into historical fantasy, all built on these deeply philosophical questions about art and memory.
Exactly. And just so we are all on the same page right from the start, as we extract the core mechanics of this universe, we are keeping the ending completely locked in a vault.
Right. No spoilers today?
Zero spoilers. We aren't going to ruin the resolution for you. The thematic buildup in this book is just far too intricately layered to spoil. You really have to experience the final strokes of this canvas yourself.
So our mission today is to explore the how and the why of the world building, right? Like, how does the author construct this incredibly suffocating tension?
Yeah, and why the characters are forced into these impossible choices.
Exactly. We want to give you, the listener, sort of the blueprint of the dread.
Blueprint of the dread, I like that. Because the vibe of this setting, it's the hook that drags you in by the collar. So let's look at how the author establishes this environment. The story opens in Angono, in the Philippines.
Which is significant.
Right, because in the real world, Angono is famously celebrated as the art capital of the country. But looking at our notes on the prologue, we are definitely not getting a charming, sunlit haven for creatives here.
Far from it. The author immediately subverts that comfortable expectation. The inciting incident happens under a sunset that actively feels wrong. Like, it's described not as a beautiful twilight, but essentially as a crime scene.
That imagery is so visceral. The clouds are these aggressive, jagged strokes of crimson physically dripping into the horizon. And it's not just visual. The text really emphasizes the smell.
Well, the olfactory details are intense.
Yeah. The air is thick with the scent of wet oil paint and this sharp metallic tang. It's sensory overload right from page 1.
And that sensory distortion perfectly introduces our protagonist. We have Diego, who is this very passionate, perhaps overly idealistic young artist. And then there's Claire.
Claire is great. She's a highly pragmatic, grounded nurse.
Right. And they are drawn to this strange phosphorescent silver glow spilling out from a narrow alleyway. A glow that the text specifically ties to the light of a first quarter moon.
And when they step into that silver light, they don't just wander into an older part of town. They step across a threshold into El Pasado, which is this 17th century street constructed entirely out of wet ink and calcified memories.
Which is just a brilliant concept.
It is. But the transition isn't just a change of scenery. This is where the mechanics of the book's magic system get really fascinating. The environment actively edits them.
Yes, edits is the perfect word for it. Because the street itself is a closed, static system. It does not recognize or tolerate the modern world.
Right. It rejects it completely.
Exactly. So when foreign elements like Diego and Claire enter, the street begins rendering them to fit its historical canvas. It's basically a localized reality warp.
And it is violently invasive. Take Claire, for example. She walks in wearing bright blue, modern nursing scrubs. The street just rejects that.
It literally forces a wardrobe change, but a physical one.
Yeah, the text describes the synthetic material of her uniform literally bleeding and thickening, blooming into a traditional barot saya. And for anyone listening who might not be familiar with Philippine history, that's a very specific, layered, pre-colonial Filipina dress. So her clothes are literally regressing in time.
Exactly. The physics of the world enforce historical accuracy.
Yeah.
I mean, the rubber tubing of her modern stethoscope just melts down.
Oh, that part was so creepy.
It flattens against your chest until it hardens into a heavy silver locket.
And Diego gets the same treatment. His modern clothes harden into a barong mahaba, the traditional formal wear. His sneakers turn into clicking leather boots. Even his charcoal pencil transforms into this cold, ancient silver stylus.
The attention to detail is staggering.
It really is. I was trying to find an analogy for this, and at first I thought, oh, it's like stepping into an immersive virtual reality exhibit. But that doesn't quite fit, because in VR, you can always just, take the headset off.
That's a crucial distinction. It's much more aggressive than a simulation.
Right. It feels more like a parasitical operating system. Like Diego and Claire are the new hardware, and the street is aggressively overwriting their source code so they can run its 17th century software.
I really like that framing because it highlights the complete lack of agency. The world of El Pasado demands absolute conformity. And we see the most chilling manifestation of this operating system taking over when we look at what happens to their shadows.
Oh my gosh, the shadow scene. Imagine you are listening to this right now. You are walking down a cobblestone street lit by flickering gas lamps. You look at your shadow cast against the limestone wall, and it just detaches from your feet.
It acts completely independent of the light source. It's wild.
Yeah.
Diego's shadow warps into this restless, predatory shape with ink claws.
And Claire's is so sad. Claire's shadow, reflecting her loss of agency, turns into a wilting floral pattern that literally flakes off the wall like dry paint.
The environment is systematically stripping away their identities, starting with their silhouettes.
Which totally upends the genre for me. When I first read the premise, I thought, okay, this is going to be a standard Portal fantasy. The trope characters walk through a magical doorway and find a kingdom of wonder. They become heroes.
Like the Narnia effect.
Exactly. But looking at the mechanics of this world, it's straight up survival horror. The environment isn't a magical kingdom. The environment is the monster.
That's a really vital read of the text. In a typical Portal fantasy, the new world empowers the protagonist. But El Pasado is a carnivorous trap.
It really is.
The primary tension driving the plot is the physical reality of the medium. Like if they stay too long, the wet ink of this world will dry on them. They will cease to be human beings and permanently become just background details in someone else's masterpiece.
We get a horrifying glimpse of that with the faceless man in the window. Just a figure whose head is an unfinished oval with crude pencil marks where the eyes should be. It is terrifyingly beautiful.
The author's prose there is just so deliberate.
You have to see how the author handles this atmosphere. The way the physical world flakes and smudges around them. There's this auditory detail of a paintbrush clinking in a water cup echoing down an empty street. Gives me goosebumps.
It builds an incredible sense of atmospheric dread, but it also raises the central mystery of the first act. I mean, if this painted world is an artificial carnivorous system designed to rewrite reality, who coded it? Who was holding the paintbrush?
And this is the twist that genuinely made me sit back and just stare at the wall. Because we aren't dealing with ancient, unknowable demons or typical fantasy monsters here.
No, it's so much more personal.
The true villains orchestrating this trap are Diego and Claire's own grandparents, Lolo Severino and Lola Basian.
It completely shifts the narrative, right? From external horror to this profound interpersonal betrayal.
Totally. Looking at the thematic notes here, I don't see Severino as just some mustache-twirling bad guy. I see a terrifying, literal manifestation of generational trauma. The elders are cannibalizing the youth to fund their own nostalgia.
That is precisely how the mechanics of his villainy operate. We learn that Severino is known as the Apprentice. Back in 1954, he struck a very dark bargain to bind this painted, static world to our flowing reality.
And now they have titles, right?
Yeah, now he and Basian serve as the architects of the threshold. Their entire function is to feed their own grandchildren to the enigmatic master of the canvas, just to keep their perfect 17th century illusion alive.
But the most messed up part, Severino actually believes he's doing them a favor. He thinks this is an act of love.
Well, because Severino's motivation is driven by a deep-seated terror of the natural progression of time. He looks at the modern world and sees only noise, chaos, and what he calls rot.
Right, the rot.
He explicitly tells Diego and Claire that he is granting them immortality. He wants to save them from the rot of old age and the indignity of death by trapping them in the golden hour of the past forever.
But he is completely blind to the mechanism of that immortality. He doesn't understand, or maybe he just refuses to accept that you can't have a perfect static image without stripping away the messy biological reality of the subject.
Exactly. He conflates preservation with life. Nostalgia, in the context of this novel, is not some warm, comforting memory. It is a predatory, consuming force.
It's parasitic.
Severino and Bazion represent a generation so fiercely obsessed with preserving their idealized legacy that they're willing to basically burn the futures of their descendants as fuel. They view Diego and Claire not as independent humans, but as raw materials.
Raw materials. Severino literally refers to them as fresh pigment.
It's chilling.
That phrase makes my skin crawl. Fresh pigment. It highlights exactly what you're saying about perfection costing humanity, because we see what happens to the people who achieve this so-called perfection. The book introduces these entities called the unfinished women.
Yes, the unfinished women. They are a tragic roadmap of exactly where Diego and Claire are heading if they fail.
They are these hollow porcelain dancers with smudged, blurry faces. They have completely lost their human essence because they've been reduced entirely to an aesthetic. They are perfectly preserved, sure, but they are entirely empty.
Which brings us to the core emotional engine of the narrative. Because the architects didn't just throw Diego and Claire into the painting at random.
No, it was calculated.
Highly specific and deeply cruel. They were chosen based entirely on the chemical and magical needs of the canvas.
Let's break down those mechanics. How does this painted world actually sustain itself? Because when our protagonists arrive, the street is failing, isn't it?
It is. The world of El Pasado is literally drying out. The ink is becoming brittle. It's cracking at the edges. To sustain the illusion, the master of the canvas requires very specific emotional and psychological elements to act as a binder for the ink.
Sort of like a magical adhesive.
Exactly. He needs crimson to provide warmth and biological life, and he needs structure to hold the deteriorating lines together.
And that's exactly why they were chosen. Claire is the crimson. She is this highly pragmatic nurse on the outside, but internally, she has this messy, beating, profoundly unscripted human heart full of unspoken love for Diego. She is the raw biological life that the static world is starving for.
And Diego is the structure. He's a visionary artist, someone who is already deeply dissatisfied with the chaotic modern world and yearns for aesthetic perfection. His mind is already tuned to the frequency of the canvas.
But there's a third element, right?
Yes, the most vital component the master needs is the tether.
The tether. This is where the emotional stakes just skyrocket for me.
The tether is the glowing red thread of memory and connection that links Diego's heart to Claire's. The master doesn't just need their individual traits. He needs the active, sacrificial love between them to permanently bind the static past to the flowing present.
So the environment isn't just trying to kill them, it's actively stress-testing their relationship. It's trying to consume the bond between them. And the way Diego tries to fight back is just devastating to read.
It really is a tragedy of good intentions.
Yeah, to protect Claire from the horrors of the street, like that terrifying Ink-Wraith that is constantly hunting them, Diego realizes he has to use his own artistic vision. He starts using his silver stylus to literally draw doors and staircases into the limestone walls to create escape routes.
But the magic system of this world demands equivalent exchange. There's a terrible price for engaging with the canvas on its own terms. As Diego imposes his structure on the world imposes its medium on him.
He essentially becomes the brush.
Exactly. He becomes the tool.
It's like an autoimmune response gone wrong.
Yeah.
He is trying to cure the situation by feeding the disease. We literally watch his physical body change. His arm turns this shimmering midnight blue as the ink dives beneath his skin and races up his veins.
It's horrific body horror.
And then that horrifying detail, a lidless eye literally opens on his forearm. The master is watching the world through Diego's flesh.
The physical transformation is grotesque, sure, but the psychological erosion is what really grounds the tragedy. As the ink colonizes his nervous system, his real-world memories are systematically overwritten by sensory details of the painting. Like, he starts remembering the heavy smell of linseed oil instead of his actual past, or arbitrary historical dates replace his life events.
He forgets the name of their favorite cafe back in Angono, and there's that moment delivered in this haunting parchment dry voice where he realizes he can't remember the color of his own mother's eyes. I wrote in my notes, this is the ultimate toxic relationship with creativity.
It really is. It's a profound metaphor for the consuming nature of the artistic process. The artist gives so much of themselves, their time, their relationships, their very identity, just to perfect the work, that they lose touch with reality entirely.
And the canvas just takes and takes.
Right. Diego is drawn to the sheer craft of the street, which ironically makes him the perfect victim. The ink seduces his artistic sensibilities, even as it erases his humanity.
It is an absolute masterclass in building tension. You have this constant suffocating pressure from all sides, the environmental threat of the ink drying, the internal threat of Diego losing his mind, and then there's the ticking clock overhead. The moon.
The moon.
The title refers to the first quarter moon, but as the story progresses, the moon in the sky is physically tilting, shifting into a waning crescent, and as the light changes, the physical borders of the painting start closing in on them.
Not to mention the external threat of the Ink-Wraith, which is described as this towering silhouette of unfinished charcoal lines, constantly pursuing them to basically scrub them out of the scene before they can escape.
The author layers these threats so meticulously that they all converge on that emotional tether between Diego and Claire. The tension is drawn incredibly tight.
You physically cannot stop turning the pages.
You really can't, which leads us directly toward the climax. Now remember, we promise no spoilers. We're not going to tell you how this resolves.
Our lips are sealed.
But we have to set the stage for this finale because the visual imagery the author paints here is just staggering.
The culmination of all these colliding forces takes place in the master's inner studio. The structural integrity of the painted world is actively collapsing around them.
It's falling apart.
Yeah, the beautiful, pristine 17th century facades are peeling away in these massive, jagged strips, revealing a terrifying, infinite white abyss underneath. The canvas is literally being thrown away.
Above them, the waning crescent moon is reduced to just a dying silver sliver. And in the center of this collapsing studio, Diego is kneeling on the floor. His body is almost entirely consumed by the midnight blue ink at this point.
He's barely human.
Right. He takes his stylus, which is transformed into a shard of pure darkness, and he is frantically trying to draw a jagged exit rift back to modern-day Angono. He is acting as a human easel, physically holding the door open against the crushing weight of the historical past.
It is a breathtaking, desperate image. And anchoring him to reality is Claire. She absolutely refuses to let go of his ink-hardened wrist.
She won't let him go.
And here we see the final mechanical payoff of the magic system. Her human touch, fueled by her desperate, messy biological love, acts as a chemical solvent to the master's perfection. Everywhere she touches him, the ink dissolves.
It's amazing. She is fighting the cold, static logic of the painted world with raw, unpredictable human emotion.
Exactly.
It is so incredibly intense. You can feel the physical strain of the scene jumping off the page. But, and I mean, this is where we have to leave you.
We're cutting it off here.
I am explicitly refusing to look at the final pages of our notes. I won't tell you who makes it through that rift. I won't tell you what happens to the architects or if the painted world of El Pasado finally dries up. I'm not even going to hint at what the ultimate devastating cost of Claire's love truly is.
It is a resolution that forces you to reevaluate everything you've just read. It perfectly ties together the mechanics of the ink, the themes of memory, and the dangers of idealized art. I mean, it earns every single ounce of its emotional weight.
It absolutely does, and it leaves you with a deeply provocative thought to carry with you long after you close the book. I want you to think about this. If you were offered eternal life inside a perfectly preserved, beautifully rendered memory, a place where you never aged, never felt the sting of loss, and everything was aesthetically flawless, but the admission price was abandoning your messy, painful, unpredictable, real-world connections.
Would you take that deal?
Right. Would you take it? Or is true beauty only found in the things that eventually fade?
That is the brilliant, lingering question at the heart of the novel. It really forces the reader to confront their own relationship with nostalgia. It challenges us to value the messiness, even the rot of the present moment, because that friction is where actual life happens.
I couldn't have said it better. Listen to me. If you have ever been moved by art, if you love deep atmospheric tension and massive emotional stakes, this book is an absolute must-read. It is the literary event of the season.
Yeah.
El Pasado by Berns is available right now. You need to go grab a copy immediately so you can understand the full picture, feel this incredible tension for yourself, and see how this masterpiece resolves. It will swallow you whole, and you'll thank it for the experience.